Hi to everyone that's logging on. It is 12:54 on my clock. We have 6 minutes before we start. So we'll start promptly at 1, but thank you for coming and hold tight. Thank you.
Hey, John, how's your family holding up?
Pretty well. Can you hear me?
Yeah. John, how's Kelly?
Good. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, things are going well. She's staying busy, and the kids are. Two of them one has a school activity, one's on spring break. Kirsten. So she's kind of disappointed, and then Jessica's working from home. So pretty busy here for the most part.
Everybody's at home. Everybody's in your house right now?
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, Jay's here. He's on spring break. Last week was e-learning. Next week will be e-learning. This week is a little bit of nothing.
Yeah, it's tough for the kids that are on spring break. It's a double brutal situation.
I wish they had decided to just keep going with the e-learning. The e-learning was really good. It was going from 8 in the morning till noon or 1, and it was keeping them busy.
Right. So we're kind of work for a while and then walk the dog, come back and work, meals, and then trying to watch some movies. But the material's getting pretty thin, watching some pretty bad movies.
Yeah. Jeff, how are you getting through it?
Similar to what Jazz are saying, I'm lucky to be here with my wife and daughter, who's home from college. So she's actually taking a final exam right now upstairs. And we're at our house in Michigan, which is pretty remote for many people. So, the curve feels flatter here. I don't know if it's true, but it feels like it is. But I haven't really been out in days.
Is there pushback from people? Hey, people that don't live here, go home. Has there been any pushback?
No, none at all. I mean, it's a very sparsely populated part of upper Michigan, upper lower Michigan, whatever, Petoskey. So, it's just a weekly trip to Meyer, and that's it.
Are there many people walking around?
Yeah, a couple. Not a lot. More than none. We've been trying to exercise, so we've been going for long walks, which is the beautiful thing about being where we are. So if you have to sequester in place somewhere or hunker down, this is a good place to do it. I live in a condo.
How long are you going to stay?
And that would be freaking me out if I was in a condo building. If I was in my condo downtown, I'd be freaking out.
Are there almost no cases there?
There's been 2. I mean, it's not 0, but it's not like Chicago. So we like the flat curve here.
Right.
But my
How long
daughter,
are you going to stay?
We're going to stay for a while. I don't know. I wish I knew the answer. Kind of would like to come home, but I don't know.
All right, we're 1 minute from start time. I'll kick us off here in 1 minute.
Yeah, who knows how long you'll be there. Hopefully not too long.
It's crazy, right? You guys aren't going to your offices, are you?
I went a couple days last week, but then it just seems silly. It seems selfish to leave the house, really. You got to everyone who can just has to stay home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a quarter of a day or half a day last week in a small office we have in Palatine. So really not much office activity.
And you companies probably have policies, supporting that anyways.
We do.
Company, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the building made a policy to only one person at a time, and you're not allowed to bring anybody who's not an employee of one of the companies. They send out a pretty strict restrictions, but I'm not going there right now.
Trying to eliminate that window glare. We've been, our company's been real active. So,
Hi there. It's Todd Phillips, RE Journals, 1 o'clock. Looks like it's a good time to start. I am our company's CFO, finance guy, and also our resident webinar expert for the next couple of weeks as we continue to train people in. Thank you for your patience as we work through this. This is our 4th webinar, our highest attended yet, but we still are working out the kinks as we go along, and special thanks to our panelists for being here today and taking time out of their day. We're going to start with just overall general controls. If you're looking at your screen right now, you'll see on the right-hand side, you have buttons for polls and chat. I want you to click on the poll button. If you are working remotely today, please choose the most appropriate response. I haven't showered yet. I am still wearing at least one article of clothes that I woke up in. Or, hey, it's time to work. I showered, got dressed, and got ready to go. Right now, the option C is in the lead with 64%, but still plenty of us in our pajamas or haven't hit the shower yet. Holding steady. The Illinois group is up and ready and dressed and ready to go. I won't tell you what it was like in other states. A lot of the I haven't showered yet. Okay, next button we're going to click on is the chat. So next to the polls button is chat. I posted a question up there. It says, if you have a companion with you working from home today, what is his or her name? I put my answer down. I've got a 8-week-old St. Bernard puppy that's luckily sleeping right now. But put your name of your pet in your poll there. And then after that, you can feel free to use this poll to ask a question. I'll try to monitor it as best I can. You can also use it to talk amongst each other. So if you see someone that you know on here, feel free to reach out and chat. Just try to not get it too overly busy. But would love to have your feedback through this chat window. I thought everybody could kind of relate to this as we're learning to work from home. Depending on what you have for the day might depend on how you groom yourself for that particular day. So with that, let's get started. We've got three panelists. And what I'm going to do is I'll have you guys introduce yourselves before we jump into just a quick analysis of what's going on with the virus. But let's go around the room sort of, and we can start with John and then work our way around and introduce yourselves.
John Joyce, Managing Director for SVN Chicago Industrial.
Do you want me to go? Jeff Kasselman, partner and senior VP at CRG. I look after workplace strategy and national accounts platform building.
I'm Steve Kohn. I'm an industrial real estate broker with Avison Young.
Thank you again, everybody, for coming. So let's start with we'll start with Steve. I want to find out, Steve, what your opinion is. There seem to be a million opinions on the internet. How long are we going to be in this? What state are we in right now, and how long do you think it's going to last?
Wow. Well, our president has said we're going to be back at work at Easter. I'm not sure which Easter, if that's going to be, but hopefully it's a lot sooner than the most pessimistic are saying, and it's time to get back, but obviously we got bigger concerns right now.
Did you want me to
Yeah, I
comment?
muted myself. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, I saw my big face come up. I figured maybe you were throwing it over to me.
Too many buttons for me.
You know, those of us in the real estate community probably didn't stop working and are probably working as hard as ever. So I think it's as much as business continuity and trying to make it business as usual as possible. Obviously, things have changed dramatically. But in that respect, it's continuity, not when does it come back. For our customers and for much of the market, I do think you're going to see a ripple effect as well as a spring back effect. So some people are going to come back with a very robust appetite for space. We're well positioned to provide it to them, brokers, developers, what have you. On the other hand, those that are really getting creamed economically are going to have this longer spring back period, could be 12, 18 months from now before they're able to assess, stabilize, and reestablish, and then begin to budget and plan for a more traditional trajectory for their businesses. So you're going to see some of both. You're going to see a spring back as well as a ripple or a lag as a result of what's going on.
All right, John, where are we at? When do we get it to get out of our houses?
It's uncertain for sure. I think we've seen a couple positive developments in the last couple of days. We've heard that China is bouncing back. Wuhan factories are back in operation. The Tesla plant is working again. South Korea seems to have figured out their issues. The death rate in Italy has decreased. I didn't see yesterday, but the 2 previous days it had. So I think we have to get used to a new normal, get working from home. So we're still working, but it's hard to stay focused because we're at home. And I'm a office kind of person. Don't really like working from home, but I'm getting used to it. So business is still transacting. To get back to normal, where we're going to work every day, I think it's somewhere between 60 and 90 days out. I hope it's sooner. But like Jeff had mentioned, some companies are really going to have a difficult time bouncing back from this because their revenues are shrinking or disappearing, and for them it could take much longer, or simply will get absorbed into another line.
Yeah, scary stuff with the layoffs and hirings and rehirings, and how things are going to rebound. Let's jump into our agreed upon group of questions, and I'll let you jump in as you want to. Just sort of start talking when you're ready to talk, gentlemen. What can brokers expect during a time of shelter-in-place orders and social distancing? What are we doing right now?
I can start on this. I believe it's a time to re-examine your business and restructure your business plan, and scrub your database, clean and organize your electronic files, change your habits, do more teleconferencing, online tutorials. This would be a great time to look at some of those opportunities, webinars like we're doing right now. So you got to kind of just change with the times. And so our company, SVN Chicago, saw a need to enhance its industrial practice. So they hired me to run their new industrial division. And I've hired 4 new practitioners, and we're just about to hire our 5th. So our team of 6 is about to open up a new office in Rosemont, scheduled to open on Monday. So we're postponing that for a couple of weeks till we can get all the service providers in there that we need to. But I think you just got to change with the times and recalibrate.
Hey, John, do you need a broker to help you with that office space?
If you have one handy that's got some free time right now, it would be good.
Steve, you go.
Well, those were all good ideas, and these are complex issues, and that's really what we get paid for, is to help our clients solve complex issues. So there's going to be a lot of that going on, and we need to continue to do it. I've thought a lot about what to do, and I tried to think. A lot of people that are on the call probably remember Jeff Kohn. He's been gone for about 8 years, unfortunately, but I've tried to think what Jeff would be doing right now, and I'm sure Jeff would say to me, get on the phone, call your customers, talk to them, listen to them, stay connected, and rise to the challenge. And so that's what I intend to do.
Those are great comments. I would just supplement it by saying the first thing you want to do is stabilize. Most of us have had a wonderful run over the last 8 or 10 years and can weather most storms personally, but maybe we can't. And so I think the first thing you have to do to be productive for others, to be of value to others, is to stabilize your own situation. And that may apply to some of the folks on our call today. It depends on where you are. Obviously, I was a broker for 31 years before jumping over to CRG. Some of my best years were in the down cycle. And it was something that I was lucky enough to have learned early in my career. It depends on your orientation. Are you an agency broker? Are you a tenant rep broker? Do you do more corporate services work? But if you can adjust your areas of focus and do some of the things that Steve and John are talking about, you could have blend and extend conversations both with your clients and with landlords. You could reconnect with folks and just see how they're doing and see if their world is reasonably stable and reasonably healthy. I've done a lot of that, and I'll tell you, just by reaching out to some old clients, I've gotten 2, let's call them meetings. They're obviously phone call meetings, but 2 people who said, "Hey, thanks for checking on me. I'm glad you did. I'd actually like to talk to you about this." And that was just because I reached out and said, "Hey, how are you doing? How's your family? How's everything working for you?" So I think it really depends on your orientation and your willingness to adjust. If you're an agency broker, you've probably got a little bit more adjusting to do. If you're corporate services, you should really be speaking to your portfolio clients and understanding their pain points and why, and their time horizons and their risk tolerances, so that you can help devise a strategy and some tactics to implement before somebody else calls them and offers to do the same thing. So I think there's lots of opportunity here for brokers if they're willing to roll with the punches.
Yeah, if I could add to what Jeff is bringing up, recently we've seen a lot of our prospective clients on the sell or lease side take action, and we've been able to ink up a number of new exclusive listing assignments over the last 10 to 12 days. I got 2 more responses today. So I think there's going to probably be some price readjustment here. So the good news is we're getting more listings. The bad news is we only have 1 showing scheduled for tomorrow, and it's going to be, we have to use social distancing, have the doors open before they get there, tell them not to touch anything while they're there, and be very careful. So the sell side's strong, the buy side is a little scarce right at this time. So with crisis, we should see new opportunities. And that's kind of how I'm approaching it. Like Steve said, or as Jeff Kohn had lived his life. In tough times, you have to pick it up and I would say pedal your bicycle twice as fast to keep up with the needs, because clients love talking to you at this time because they don't know what to do either. And since we're communicating with each other and we're having conference calls, we have good messages to deliver to them and have meaningful conversations that'll lead to activity after the dust settles. So although a lot of deals people are hitting the brakes, they're nervous, they're scared, these are plans that they have in place for projects that are 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. They're not going to go away. The virus will be controlled and the projects will come back. So you have to keep focused, working on all of these opportunities and know that the business isn't dying and the United States is still a world power and it's going to be okay.
All right, I want to take a brief moment and thank everybody for logging in. We've had a couple of people come in and out. I apologize for that. Every software vendor we looked at has capacity issues. So Zoom, if you're comfortable with that, they're operating at 300% capacity all the time right now. So we hope that this is the best software out there. But if you do get kicked off, just log back in and it should be up and running again. I also have a panic button. If everything goes down for some reason, you'll immediately get a new link to join a new room and we'll reconvene. With that, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. I'll flash that up on the screen from time to time. But to get back into it, we want to talk real estate here in a minute, but one of our viewers or listeners had a question about internal employees inside your companies. Are people accounting jobs or anything like that? Is there a possibility that layoffs are going to happen? I know it's a tough question, but what are you seeing in terms of people losing their jobs or getting laid off?
That's a tough one. So far, for us, that has not been the case. I do want to give a shout out to Bob Clark and Sean Clark and the leadership that they're providing at a really tenuous moment in time for everybody in the Clayco Enterprises family of companies. I do fashion myself as a little bit of a leader, and yet I wake up every morning thinking how grateful I am that they're the ones doing the leading and not me, and they're doing an amazing job. They're committed to keeping everybody employed, but they're also preemptively looking at ways to anticipate whether this is long-term, short-term, medium-term, and are making adjustments internally that have affected everybody a little bit, but that's better than letting people go. And so I'm proud to be part of that family, and I'm pleased for that kind of a reasonable, preemptive, stabilized approach. One of the things that I would encourage brokers to do, because you have to draw a distinction now between brokers and brokerages, right, is brokers who are independent contractors working for bigger brokerages should have a conversation with the brokerage about where the brokerage is with things, because as an independent contractor, you may not be fully privy to those kinds of events or scenarios, and yet it's crucial to you that there is stability there at the office. So it's really interesting times, at least as far as Clayco and CRG goes, and our family of companies. There are no layoffs, not intending on having anybody if everybody can pitch in and help along the way.
Yeah, let me jump into RE Journals. Since you all are watching one of our webinars, we are absolutely committed to continue to serve the real estate community. We're trying really hard to reinvent ourselves really fast, get webinars going, find other creative ways for people to continue to get together. 70% of our business is the event business, so it's a tough time to be in the event business. But we are also committed to making sure that we have the people here to serve you all and make these things available. All right, let's jump into our next question. Let's talk about real estate then. Which of the real estate sectors do you feel is best poised for recovery and worst poised?
I can start this one. I'd say I'm an industrial real estate practitioner, and industrial really is in the best position at this time. I'm saying that because, downtown office is going to see some challenges. All of us are working from home now, and people that had expansion plans on office or lease renewals are going to look at this and say, I could buy my employee a $2,000 computer and they're still going to be productive at home. I trust these employees. We don't need that expansion space anymore. Or we're not going to renew, or we're going to downsize. Retail's being replaced by e-commerce quicker than ever. So that's going to be a challenge. Multifamily, there are going to be, our company's not laying anybody off that I've heard of. But you know that the restaurants have laid all their people off or fired them so they can collect unemployment insurance. So multifamily could get affected because people don't have jobs. They won't be able to pay their rent. And the landlords of those spaces are not allowed to evict anybody. There's a new law in place. So that could be a tough sector. But industrial should stay strong. In fact, will rebound and probably grow from this event. Trucking companies are doing great right now. I noticed some of the national carriers, their stocks have been skyrocketing. Inventories are growing right now. Resupply lines are evolving as we're hosting this webinar, and industrials in a good spot right now for the foreseeable future.
I can jump in on that one. Lou Conweiler always used to tell us that you make your money in real estate on the buy. And I think what he meant there was you got to buy right. And I think a lot of fortunes are going to get made over the next year or two by people buying things right. Main and Main is still going to be Main and Main after this horrible event occurs. It's still going to be Main and Main. So people that are going to be able to buy are going to do really well. Of course, e-commerce is going to continue to boom. And if you were a broker for Costco or Walmart or Amazon, you wouldn't be on this call today. You'd be so busy trying to secure space. So that's going to be a fantastic one. Right before all this happened, there were people coming into our offices at Avison Young that had funds, unbelievable funds, that the money was already raised and they were looking to buy industrial, A and B. And one guy I talked to on Monday, a national guy, said they have a $3.5 billion fund that was already raised. And they expect this to lead to a lot of buying. So I think we're going to see fortunes made, changes the hands of real estate, and we gotta get involved in it.
Yeah, it's good commentary. Industrial for sure, right? E-commerce is hot and hotter still because of what's happened. There's a hiring binge by most of the players in that field. There's additional warehouse or space consumption taking place from the kinds of companies that Steve mentioned and all the people that they work with. And the people that didn't, the consumers that didn't previously engage in e-commerce and are now, hunkered down at home, are kind of forced to dip their toe into that world and it's bringing new consumers into the e-commerce market. So that bodes well in the long term for a strong spring back for industrial. So does the supply chain and the challenges that this has presented to everybody. So nearshoring, more robotics, more automation, more 3D printing, inventory closer to home, less susceptibility to supply chain disruption from Asia is suddenly a real conversation. It's been sort of in the periphery, and all of a sudden, most of the folks we're talking to are spending a good bit of time planning for substantial supply chain retrenchment, and that bodes well for industrial. But the one thing that really wasn't discussed yet is mission critical and in particular data centers. There's a lot of companies that are forced to reckon with whether they had enough licenses, enough bandwidth, enough capacity for everybody to work from home. And it's putting a real strain on the system. And so that by itself is going to lead to pretty significant expansion of data center and mission critical type real estate. And then when you add to that things like increased e-commerce, more online data consumption across the board for all kinds of purposes and reasons, and then 5G, and as all of our major carriers roll out 5G across the country, and we start using 10 to 100 times more data, all of that leads to a serious shortage of all kinds of facilities under that umbrella classification of mission critical. So you can expect that sector to be uber hot coming out of this event. On the flip side, retail and restaurants are getting creamed. Retailers were already reeling and on their defensive, and many of those won't make it back after this event. Steve was right to say opportunistic buying and making your money on the buy, create buy opportunities, and that's an active. Well, it's not an asset class. It's an activity that will generate further activity or an opportunity to generate further activity in the marketplace across all of those asset classes. And in the last week or so, I've actually had the good fortune to have some consultations with some interesting companies and joint ventures of companies, which is even interesting that they're partners that previously would never partnered together to create a new kind of retail, sort of an experience center, if you will. It's part entertainment, it's part consumption, it's part food. We're still going to go somewhere. But if it's not to the retailers that had to close that we used to like to go to, it will be something else. And there are a lot of people already on that bleeding edge, planning towards that, and using this opportunity as a great buy opportunity, as Steve pointed out. So there is sort of a double-edged sword there, but I'm cautiously optimistic for real estate in general. Office is going to have some challenges, retail have challenges, but everyone else is going to come out okay.
We have a couple great questions from the audience. Jeff, this one's for you specifically. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but talk about what this could mean for the future of downtown Chicago CBD long term. Do you think we'll see a societal reassessment about high density living and working?
I don't, but it's a very good question. And I do not consider myself to be a definitive source on it. I'm immersed in it. I've moved downtown from the suburbs. I work downtown. I work at a firm that does a tremendous amount in CBDs, in particular in the Chicago CBD. So I'm fascinated by it. I do believe at the end of the day, we have a herd mentality as people. And even if we could all move 200 miles out and work remotely, maybe perhaps like we're doing now. I'm speaking to you from northern Michigan, right? I'm far away from Chicago. But yet I crave to be downtown and in that urban cultural center. And I think that represents a lot of the CBDs. And so it will change things, and yet it won't change things. People will still want to live there. There will still be cultural outlets, parks, museums, sports teams, restaurants, experiences. And I think that's going to keep most CBDs together. But will it change how close or how far we stand from each other? Will it change whether we touch the front desk or stand 3 feet away from the front desk when we arrive at a particular building? Sure, all those things are up for discussion.
Anybody else want to comment on CBD living? Yeah, sure. I don't want to touch it either. All right. So the next question we see. Yeah, right. Does anybody have any knowledge on the new law with landlords and tenant evictions? Anybody had any interaction with that yet?
My understanding is they're no longer permitted. I don't know if that's just residential, but I think there's a protected time here where you can't evict people. Excuse me. If an employer has to face paying its rent or payroll, they're going to pick payroll so they can stay in business to pay the rent later and honor all their commitments. But I don't think you can evict people at this time, from what I understand.
Sounds like a great topic for another webinar. Okay, got a question here from Dan Rafter. How do you think this economic slowdown we're going to see now will differ from the last one we had in 2008? And from a real estate perspective? We're looking at a long recovery, lots of foreclosures, or do you think it'll be more of a V-shaped and come back?
Well, at the end of the day, let's hope for a V-shape. Again, I'm cautiously optimistic there will be enough drivers to show the curve that kind of shape. But some companies are getting absolutely slaughtered as this extends over time. And their customers. And so I do think you're going to see some of both. But to the extent that you have stockpiled some cash, you've recently sold and not reinvested, you've raised the funds specifically for this kind of a rainy day, there are going to be tremendous acquisition opportunities, and those that play for the long run. Let's just say the Amazons who know that they're building an infrastructure for the next 30 years, not for the next 30 days, and that there will be some sort of a recovery at some point. Their appetite to continue to consume real estate, and not just them, but their peers and their colleagues, their competitors, continues unabated. So there's still a lot of really positive things happening that make this very different. And in addition, cost of capital is very low. Banks are well capitalized, are stable at least for the moment, and are wanting to put their money into the market. There's economic stimulus coming through the government, and there's all kinds of reasons why we should expect that steeper springback V curve, which would be a lot different than last time around. That's what we're hoping for.
My thoughts. Oh, sorry.
No, go.
Go ahead, Steve.
That's a great question. I remember when I started in industrial real estate in '97, there were a lot of buildings, but it was hard to get people in the car to go look at them. And in the last few years, it's been real easy to get people in the car. But there haven't been a lot of things to look at that the guys wanted. And I thought a few weeks ago that if there had been 10 24-foot clear or greater, 100,000 square foot warehouse buildings available, even in Cook County, that all of them would have been absorbed. They would have been purchased because there was so much demand and a lot of people really wanted good space just a few weeks ago. So I'm hoping that when this clears up, that some of those guys that survive are going to be able to absorb and buy the buildings from, unfortunately, some of the people that aren't. So optimistically, it could be more like a V, but we don't know how deep it is yet and how long this is going to last. Although I did hear one story that that auto part manufacturer, the big one, the Chinese one that has 25,000 employees in China, has they're back to 90% production. They claim that not many of the people even got sick. So that's only a few months from when this started in China. That could be our experience here. In a few months, we could be past this and back, not to the way things were, but close to where they were. So maybe this is going to be a quicker recovery than the experiences we had after 08 and September 11th.
I'll add to that. I remember I was at a showing with Jim Neswald of Prologis at the corner of Nicholas and Greenleaf. And it was about the year 2008, if I'm not mistaken. And Jim said the deeper the dip, the higher the bounce. And he was right, 100%. And I expect a V-shaped recovery. Don't know how deep the gouge will be here. But I think you're going to see a lot of companies coming back to the U.S., that have moved manufacturing overseas because they just were caught off guard here. And accelerate adoption of e-commerce, like we said. So again, I think industrial is in a good spot for that. We've seen other devastating events, 9/11, .com bust, mortgage situation in 08. That we've been through this before. So I would say to young brokers or young professionals that are in the business, reach out to the senior people in your office. They'll appreciate that you're asking them, if you're confused on any matters, because this is a confusing time. And you'll get good advice and follow that and look at this as an opportunity to enhance your career.
All right, I'm going to try to combine some of the questions we had and some of the stuff that's coming across. So in regards to what our clients asking you to do today, we've got another question that says, do you see a flood of lease renegotiations coming, and are you planning to make that a service that you'll actively promote to your clients?
I could get started here.
You guys take that one.
Yeah. So Client reached out to me yesterday. He's got distribution centers in New Jersey, Chicago, and Los Angeles, and just looking for advice. He's seeing a pinch right now, and we talked about force majeure, rent reduction, maybe no escrow payment for a fixed period of time. If he has any future rent abatement, he should use it now. If you are going to get into a situation where you're going to extend your lease, you can get some concessions up front, like we saw in 08, like a blend and extend opportunity. Landlords are probably going to forgive late fees at this time, I would think, and want to work with their tenants. Same concept of not laying your people off, of helping them get through the tough times so they're there for the long run. And like I said earlier, if it comes down to payroll or rent, you got to go with payroll. I'm a landlord, and I don't like saying those words, but it's something we have to accept and work together, come together, and have a better outcome.
Steve, you want to tag on anything?
Quickly, I'll add that I heard the story that landlords now are asking their people to assess their portfolios and to look at who can survive this and who's going to have trouble. And I would imagine these next couple of weeks, the landlords are going to be determining who they are going to give concessions to and who they aren't. So obviously, all of us need to work with our clients that have leases and help them maneuver through this. These are the complex issues that we solve for people. So yeah, it's going to be a big part of what we do moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think the better brokers, the tenant reps, anyone who's been through this in a previous cycle are already in contact with their clients, and the ones that have a good runtime ahead of them, good credit worthiness, use up a good chunk of space in a particular building, regardless of what kind of asset class that is. There's probably at least renegotiation to be had. In one form or fashion. So I do think that, the straight answer to the question is yes, there's a lot of that. I just want to add one other thing, though, which is I had a pretty extended conversation with my own attorney who does real estate, and he said he's never worked harder. He's working from home, obviously, and billable hours are up, not down. And I said, what are you working on? And he said, force majeure. And what does it really mean? And so for all of us in the industry who have had a force majeure clause in every contract that we've ever touched for cycles and years, and we've really never had a true legal test of how it's going to work, we're about to get that test. We're all going to learn force majeure inside and out. This particular attorney seemed to think there was going to be a spate of lawsuits between landlords and tenants, particularly portfolio landlords and portfolio tenants, where multiple dozens of locations are in the conversation at the same time about how it works, what does it mean, what was fair and what was reasonable. And that's the best place to leave the commentary. This is a great time for reasonableness to prevail, for what makes humanity, the good things, because it's not always good, let's face it, but it can be good, and it's the things that we all sort of strive for or aspire to. And in each tenant and each landlord scenario or discussion is probably a little bit different. If you're chronically late on your rent, then giving you some abatement now isn't likely to ever get paid back. On the other hand, you may never get anything from that tenant if you don't cooperate a little bit. On the other hand, again, if you've got a great credit tenant who's perfect in their history but needs a little bit of help to get through or to get by, I think the professional reasonableness standard says, yeah, you have a conversation with them as a landlord, and you work it out in a reasonable fashion. No interest, spread it out, pay it back, add some time to the lease, whatever it takes. So it will be a big part, but how that conversation happens and between whom and whether it's amicable and reasonable or not is largely up to all of you on the phone and all of us. And I hope that's the approach you take.
All right, let's keep rolling. We're getting a lot of questions from the audience. I hope that's okay with everybody. I want to move on here just real quick. I don't think anybody on this webinar is a medical expert, but to what extent do you think this is going to change medical real estate? Jeff, you're smiling. Are we going to see more retail type medical, or anything going to change?
Yeah, no, I think, urgent care is probably a subclass of commercial real estate that's going to benefit in the long run from this. But telemedicine is probably the big winner in all of this. The equipment manufacturers, all these shortages of equipment that are real and are scary, because if our frontline healthcare providers can't take care of us, and there's nobody to take care of us when we get sick, we all have a big problem, and it's much worse than we thought it was. So I think those are some of the opportunities and areas of brightness for medical and for healthcare. But beyond that, I'm not really sure.
All right, let's do the question that seems to come up with every panel I've ever done in my entire lifetime. What is going to happen to cap rates in light of what's going on now? Steve, want to take it?
Wow. I think I'm going to have to defer to my panel members on that one.
I really don't know, but I'll just say that short term they should increase. A lot of deals people are looking for longer due diligence periods due to COVID-19. 60 days, 90 days. The industry standard is 45 days. So deals are going to get shelved for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It's almost like we need to take a snapshot in time and see where we were before this hit us. That's really not an option. So I would say buyers are still want to do deals, but they might not be able to get their field work done. You might be able to inspect a roof, but you might not be able to inspect the inside of a facility because the tenant won't let you in, or there's some issue going on between the tenant and the landlord. So you can't complete due diligence studies. Environmental studies could be delayed. So all in all, with less deal velocity, that would show that cap rates would increase at this time. Long term, I'm with Jeff. I'm sorry, I'm with you, Jeff, but I'm more with Steve right here in that this is a buying opportunity. I don't know when you'd want to step in, but it would have been a good idea to buy stocks 2 days ago. So long-term cap rates should come down. Investors will want to get in, but I would say short-term they're going up.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You have to think about it in terms of supply and demand. And in the capital markets, they call it making a market. So it's about making the market. If there's a lot of supply and not a lot of demand for what's being offered, those cap rates are going up, right? If, on the other hand, the dynamics are in place, you're at Main and Main, you've got Class A construction, you've got good credit tenant on a long-term lease, and a lot of reusability well down the road in the future for that building, as far as anybody could guess or see. And it's in a tier 1 market, and there's still 12 bidders. Maybe there would have been 20 bidders yesterday, but today there's still 12 bidders for that. You're not going to see a lot of cap rate change there. A little bit, because there's more perceived risk, and that's what the cap rate reflects, but not much. On the other hand, in a tier 2, tier 3 market, where there are now fewer buyers for that same kind of real estate, you are going to see a big cap rate difference. Retail is going to see a cap rate difference because of the perceived risk. Office is going to see cap rate difference with limited exception because of the perceived risk, because of all the changes we've already covered on the call. So you're going to see a mixed bag there, but it's not going to change much in some instances, and it's going to change dramatically in others.
All right, another good question here. I just got to find it. We got a comment on cap rates. What do you predict for the future of co-working spaces? Do we see this affecting all the the co-working things come on board?
That's it. I mean, I have a comment, but defer to you guys if you want to jump in.
It's really not something I've spent a lot of time on. So Jeff, if you're in that world, I think you would be the best to comment.
I have some friends in that world. We work and convene and a few others. And first of all, nobody's going. And so there's some near-term layoffs or some staff right-sizing taking place, as anybody would probably expect. It's also a place riskier if the free flow of travel were back in place because of how people use those kind of spaces. So in the near term, it's kind of bleak, but in the long run, we are headed more to a space as a service model. And co-working, take the brand off of it for a minute, think a little bit broader, more on macro level. It's space as a service, and it provides a tremendous value, even at a higher price point, because of all the things that come prepackaged with it, in the ability for a workforce to not be locked into a particular space at a particular building at a particular address, and that workforce has that ability now to get out and meet and greet and collaborate in really forward-looking ways. And so I do think at the end of the day, co-working actually has a bright future, but it's not going to be this year, and it may not even be next year. But don't be surprised when some of the bigger corporations, when they reassess their world, especially their office space usage, as a result of what's taking place right now, might realign themselves closer with a co-working model than with a traditional 10-year lease, fixed asset operation, office space operation that we've grown up with and that we're used to. So I actually think at the end of the day, it's kind of bright, but we'll see.
Okay, Steve, you touched on earlier industrial in the Chicago market, but we've got a question here about other markets, St. Louis, the rest of the Midwest. How do we see Chicagoland comparing to those, and what do we see happening in those markets?
Well, Chicago has a unique set of challenges before this began with our tax issues and the state finances. So it'll probably accelerate where the states around here have a slight advantage because their issues weren't as pronounced. So it may continue to make Indiana, Wisconsin, Missouri get more attention for those states on these bigger deals.
I concur with Steve. Chicago already had a paradigm going on, high taxes, high workman's comp, high problems. And now it's likely we've got more cases of COVID than our neighboring states do because of the density. So it should accelerate. You know, other states are offering incentives. And at this point in the cycle, tenants are probably getting their reconciliation bills for the higher taxes from Cook County last year, and they're facing paying the rent and the additional rent and the escrow, blah, blah, blah. And they've been looking over the border in Kenosha, Pleasant Prairie, Northwest Indiana, or Steve said Missouri, Iowa. Now they might say, I've had enough, I'm leaving. So there's a lot of new development here that could be a challenge to fill some of the standing inventory.
Let me offer just a slightly different take on that, which is Chicago's got wonderful dynamics, transportation, labor, infrastructure, and its ability to serve locally, regionally, nationally. And in times like this, there tends to be a flight to quality, and Chicago represents that quality best relative to the Midwest. And it also has the laborers. And at the end of the day, until a new era of robotics and automation rule the day, and we're fortunately a ways away from that, although it is coming, as long as labor is the driver, Chicago is going to have a big voice at the end of the day are a big place at the table. And don't forget, when you look at the coasts, if you look at what it costs to operate on the West Coast or on the East Coast, Chicago actually seems quite reasonable. So I'm not saying Illinois is perfect and we don't have our drawbacks financially as a state or politically, but I think Chicago actually represents a relative bargain with strong labor and strong dynamics and will continue to perform well in the near term and the long term.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left for everybody in the audience. Now is the best time to ask your questions. If you asked a question earlier and I missed it, please retype it. I've had to scroll up and down and try to make sure I've gotten to everything. But we do have 2 quick ones that just popped in. The first question is, other than the sectors that were already mentioned, what is the next frontier where you see substantial growth in the next 5 to 10 years?
Mission critical for sure.
That
Anybody
seems
else?
to be where all the growth's going to be. The data centers and the demand for data is really going to change the way the world works.
Nothing more to add to that.
Okay, next up, with so many restaurants pivoting to a pickup delivery model during the lockdown, might we see an extension of that during the ensuing recovery, perhaps even for non-food related retailers? Thoughts on that?
Jury's out. Go ahead.
You still you can't drive by and get your hair cut, your nails done, or go to a bar and meet your friends. So, of course, there'll be some pushback from large gatherings, but overall, I think the new world's going to look similar to the old world.
Got another industrial question. Oh, go ahead if you want to answer.
Well, it just comes down to the ROI. If you can make money at it, when this event causes you to put the infrastructure in place and you can operate it as an extension of your existing business and do it with a reasonable ROI or a comparable or better ROI than you were getting on your other stuff, you're going to do more of it. I tend to agree with Steve in the realities of how people like to congregate and why they come together and the limitations on pick up and carry out. But I can expect to see more of this for those that have figured out how to do it with scale and get an ROI on it, because they're putting that ability into place today. So come tomorrow, that ability will remain in place if they want to continue to leverage it, but it will be supplemental to the other things that they do.
Got another question. What do you see in the near future for spec industrial development? Who's got the guts to go out and build right now spec?
Yeah, there's more coming from not just from CRG, but from many of our peers and competitors. We've had a number of phone calls with our capital sources reinforcing their desire to continue to fund. We do believe there's immediate demand as well as pent-up demand. We do believe in all the things that the gentlemen on the call today are talking about. And we're not the only ones that feel this way. So I think you can expect to see more industrial spec, not runaway out of control spec, but more of it along the lines of what you've seen for the last, say, 12 to 24 months.
John, let me jump in and then you'll go. Infill is going to continue. There'll be spec infill, and we're going to continue to see that trend of malls and auto dealers and other uses of real estate be converted into spec warehouse over the next little while as these bigger trends of e-commerce continue to take hold.
It's a great comment.
No change really to what you guys added. Maybe more build-to-suit activity. I think last year 41% of all new construction was build-to-suit, so maybe a little increase there.
I hope you're right.
This last question might be outside the scope, but it's about reopening mission critical optometrists, dentists, and stuff if we don't have any protective supplies. How are we going to get reopened again with all the supply chain issues we have? That probably applies to construction as well. You guys that are doing any industrial development, are you seeing supply chain issues, or are we short on everything?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Is this about medical supplies, about
Well,
construction supplies?
I think the question was medical supplies. So if anybody's got an answer for that, that'd be great. But I pivoted a little bit into our construction too.
Well, I can speak to the construction since PRG and our sister company Clayco are in the construction business. We have a number of active projects around the country. My understanding is they're all continuing to the full extent of our ability. We're permitted by law, and the only place right now that we are asked to shut down is the state of Pennsylvania, where we do have a number of projects. There may be other locations, but that's the one I know for a fact to be compliant with that shutdown. But generally speaking, the supplies are there with changes in protocol. There are workers to work. Most places consider that essential business. Our customers, the Amazons of the world and folks like that are asking us to please continue. And as I said earlier, the capital continues to fund, although we gut check it daily, if not weekly, if not daily, just to make sure that we're not caught unexpectedly as things are rapidly evolving as we're all experiencing. I mean, one day feels like a week and 1 week feels like a month these days. So with that, said, construction, knock on wood, seems to be doing just fine in most places.
Yeah, amen to that. On a day feeling like a week and a week feeling like a month, I bet everybody feels that sort of. I want to thank all of our panelists here. I want to let everybody know we're going to continue to do webinars. We would like to encourage you to bring us topics, speakers, sponsors, anybody that wants to be involved. This is our temporary operating platform. We have capacity to do 2 or 3 a day. So we would love to use this platform to keep everyone informed and keep everyone talking. Make sure you talk to Mark or Ernie or John or Marianne or anybody on our team, Dan or Matt and Team Illinois. I'm going to flash up on the screen as we log off each person's contact info. So if you want to reach out to them, you'll be able to jot that down now. Any last questions, thank yous, whatever, feel free to put it through the chat. I will sign us off in about 2 minutes. Until then, if anybody has any last thoughts, between our panelists, Steve, Jeff, or John, go for it. And I'm just going to flip through these screens. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having me, and everyone, please stay safe and let's flatten this curve and get to better days.
For those of you that need brokers, the 2 gentlemen who are with me on this webinar are 2 of the best. They're both SIORs. They're busy, and yet they took the time to be here with you. And I hope that you'll call them because they are 2 of the best, with all sincerity.
I just want to thank the Real Estate Journal for sponsoring this event and production, and everybody for taking time to be part of this. I think these conversations and meetings, we have to go on, and we have to keep working and find the solution here, and we'll come out just fine.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks everyone.
Guys. See you soon.
I'll keep us live for 2 more minutes, but feel free to log off. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks, everybody.